Welcome to The Investor, a podcast where I, Joel Palafinkel, your host, dives deep into the minds of the world's most influential institutional investors. In each episode, we sit down with an investor to hear about their journeys and how global markets are driving capital allocation. So join us on this journey as we explore these insights. All right. Super excited today. I've got a longtime friend and guest on our podcast today. We've got Paige Finn Doherty. She's an engineer, a writer. She got into investing by writing a children's book about venture capital while an early employee at WorkOS, a San Diego native now based in SF. She enjoys reading, traveling, surfing, music, and spending time with her family and friends. I'm proud to be part of this journey with her and just be called a friend. And I'm a longtime fan of just the content community she's been building. So we're going to unpack a lot of things. As all of you know, you guys are part of this audience looking to kind of build the skills, get into venture investment banking, private equity, and then eventually, hopefully, launch a fund. Some people have done this in tandem, right? They're working in tech and they're kind of building, they just go straight to building a fund on the side. So we could talk about all those different permutations. Paige, you and I have a lot of peers that have, got into this space from all those different types of permutations. But what we don't talk about is just who Paige is. What was going on? Maybe you could start out, Paige, with just kind of a quick overview, but tell me what was going on in your mind as a Gen Z, right?
As a Gen Z.
As a Gen Z in like maybe middle school, high school, because I feel like people are starting companies in high school and in middle school. And I would say with me being a millennial, I never really knew about entrepreneurship until later in my career. And I wonder, again, hindsight is 2020. I've been blessed with all the things that have happened to me in my life, and I am where I am now because things happen how they did. So never regret that, but I just think it's crazy how we're now exposed to people that are younger than even you, Paige, and earlier generations. They're using AI now for a lot of stuff. Where with you, I think there was obviously content and community, and people are getting away from the digital world, as I would say, with the Gen Zs. But I feel like it's even going to be more unique. I don't know what the Gen is before Gen Z. Is it Gen X?
Like after or before?
Before.
Wait, I think it's Millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha. I could be
Gen
wrong.
Alpha. I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'll look it up while you go do your intro. But why don't you walk us through your background, your intro, just and then kind of just start with kind of like what was going on in your mind through high school and talk us through college and just kind of your career, and then I'll pop in periodically, and I'm going to look up the names of all the generations.
Perfect. Well, Joel, thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here and have some fun today together with you. It's been incredible to get to share this journey with you since the beginning. So thank you for your support. What was going through my head in middle school and high school? So to put it in perspective, I graduated high school in 2016. So I would have graduated middle school in 2012. I am so grateful to have had such an incredible childhood. I was born in New Hampshire, but we moved to San Diego when I was 6. So I grew up in San Diego. I was always outside. I would say my first job was my mom as an artist. You can see a painting of hers in the background. And my 2 younger brothers and I, we went camping a lot. So we would walk around the campground selling our mom's art cards. And that was how we made our allowance for the summer. And it was so fun. Like I really enjoyed meeting people, sharing more about my mom's art, and getting to work with my younger brothers was just, it was just like such a fun experience and entrance into entrepreneurship at a young age. And then when I got to high school, I'd say I was always very future minded. Like I was always thinking about what was next and what would I do after. And I loved engineering. I grew up going to the lab and the manufacturing floor with my dad, who is a mechanical systems engineer. So I decided to study mechanical engineering. And then actually my last semester of high school, I had played competitive soccer like my whole life. So that's been a big part of my journey of, being on a team and just really honing my craft in that. But I got an internship at Northrop Grumman when I was 17. So I actually would go to high school, and then after high school, I would change in my work clothes in the car and go to Northrop and learn more about applying technology to the real world, which was just an incredible entrance into what I do now. So it
One
was
thing
like,
I'll say, which is
yeah.
crazy, is so I have a similar background. So I don't know if we probably talked about this, but I worked
Mhm.
at Rockwell Collins, and then worked on the government side. And one thing I think that's really unique, and I don't know if it's still available, right? Because I mean, when I did this is before the recession, but like the DoD used to, a lot of these government contractors, I think if you went to like a local school, you would get
Yeah.
a full ride. Like they pay for your entire master's. I did my entire master's
Whoa.
for free, but I don't know if that perk was still there when you were at Northrop. But we were, I worked at a similar defense contractor in the past, and that's like usually a perk that you would never hear about now. You usually get like maybe a, $3,000 or $5,000 stipend if you want to do an MBA or do something
That's so
else.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
I actually ended up applying and was selected. I think I was like one of 5 people
Mhm.
across like all of Northrop's high school interns to get a scholarship for college, which was amazing. It was like a smaller one, so it helped. But I
Yeah.
also ended up getting a full ride scholarship to San Diego State. So I'm
Nice.
very grateful for that. And that was like
Mhm.
through the school through a memorial scholarship. So
Yeah.
that was great.
So
Yeah.
you got exposed kind of early to entrepreneurship and learned that you can earn an income by doing something creative, not necessarily
Yeah.
having to just go get a job, right? So how did that flow into college? And based on some of the stuff that you told me, I mean, there's a huge entrepreneurial spirit and ecosystem at San Diego as well.
Yeah, I'm so grateful for my time at San Diego State. It was like so much fun and I learned so much. So
Hmm.
I started out in mechanical engineering. I worked at Northrop Grumman for 3 years in college, but then I ended up watching Silicon Valley. And before that, I had never really heard of venture capital. And it was like a light switch went off in my head where I was like, this is what I'm being called to do. Like
Hmm.
I am meant
Yeah.
to be running a venture firm. So I feel very lucky that I had that clarity of what I wanted to do and have just continued to take baby steps in like pursuing that for the past 7 years now.
Hmm.
Um, and before that, like I've run a podcast for almost 5 years now, but before that, I would interview music artists at school. So I was part of the Aztec Music News Group at San Diego State.
So was it like a radio? Because I know some colleges they have like a radio station. So how did you?
Yeah, no, we
What was
would
the
like
format
go
of
we would like go to the shows and interview folks like before or
that?
after. And Christian Lee, who was like the other person that I worked with, was an incredible interviewer. Like I feel like he
Mhm.
taught me so much about how to be an active listener, how to do deep research into folks' backgrounds. He could pull out random fun facts and they're like, where did you find out that information?
Sure.
And so I took a lot of those skills into now my work with like due diligence with founders or interviewing people for the podcast. Um, so I feel I don't know, it's funny how your skill building and random side quests ends up being such a big part of what you
Hmm.
do later.
Yeah. And then talk me through what was going on throughout your college career, and then tell me what was going on in your mind in terms of your first job. It looks like you were kind of
Mhm.
probably doing internships and looking for your first full time gig. So, well, because you said that you definitely knew that you wanted to get into VC. I went through this process myself, right? I mean, I started out in a heavy tech role, but did you try to get into VC first, or did you just want to kind of build the startup chops and the entrepreneurial, operating chops first?
Oh, great question. So if I had stayed at Northrop one more summer, I would have gone to work on the James Webb Space Telescope, which would have been
Hmm.
amazing. But I had found this
Wow.
passion for venture and
Hmm.
I joined our first undergrad team for venture capital investment competition, which is a
Hmm.
program that I hold very near and dear to my heart. And through that, I got recruited to join a growth equity firm in San Diego my senior year summer. And so while I was
Sure.
there, I was able to like actually spend time evaluating companies, talking to founders, helping build the firm brand,
Hmm.
and really like build that muscle.
Yeah.
And actually, COVID happened my senior year of college. So it was a bit
Yeah.
weird. Like I was interviewing for roles in March of 2020, and then it's like everyone was having hiring freezes. Like I was
Sure.
like what is going on? And then I started posting on Twitter. So I was spending like 8 to 9 hours a day on Twitter, building a personal brand
Hmm.
around my interest in venture and startups in general.
So
And
you
then
were doing that while you were working at the growth equity firm as a summer intern.
I left. No, I left in January of
Hmm.
2020. And then from then I was recruiting for full-time positions. And then I found Twitter and I was like, oh, this is so cool. Like all the
Yeah.
VCs are hanging out and this feels like a great way to build a network in this
Hmm.
ecosystem. And then I actually ended up getting recruited from my Twitter to work at WorkOS. I have
Oh,
a
wow.
little Christmas
Yeah.
mug here. But I think I was employee 12 there at the time.
Sure.
They had just raised their Series A. And I'd actually done a project on single sign on and enterprise authentication. And just seeing how much cybersecurity was growing as a space was really interesting to me. So I
Hmm.
was there for about, yeah, a year, exactly a year.
So jumping right into growth equity, that's a very coveted role, and it can be technical as well, right? Because you're going beyond, series. I mean, everything is blended now, right? A series B a few years ago is probably like a series A now, right? So sometimes it's tough
Yeah.
to
Well,
even
we
define
we
what growth
did like
equity is.
TVC did like early growth. So we were actually looking at
Hmm.
businesses between like 1 to 5 million in ARR. So
Yeah,
ironically, that's now kind of
that's like
seed and
pre-seed now.
series that yeah, exactly. So
So
I
what advice would you give to professionals that are, and maybe what are some learnings, again, nothing proprietary, but what are some learnings that you think you took away from being the top candidate to kind of land that role, for people? And this is for people that are like, look, you know what, maybe I'm coming out of college, maybe I'm looking to pivot my career. What are the things that you did that maybe stood out? I can imagine you like creating some type of unique artifact, writing a handwritten note,
oh, and
making something
yeah, no,
personal.
I think it was
But
honestly like a LinkedIn post. Like I had posted
okay.
about we took second place to the
Hmm.
reigning national champs at venture capital
Yeah.
investment competition at Google, and
Hmm.
I had posted about it. And then Michael Sprinkles, who was a partner at TVC, reached out and was like, "Hey, I did the same program. This is super
Yeah.
cool." So I guess one transition I've been making is transitioning from building a personal brand to building the brand of Behind Genius, which has been
Hmm.
a very interesting transition because I think
Yeah.
like a personal brand can get you into the position that you want to be in. But when I think about the legacy that I want to leave, like Behind Genius is really the brand that I want to spend my time
Yeah.
building now. Yeah.
Look, I mean, all of my channels, maybe a couple of years ago, were all just Joel Palafinkel's TikTok, Instagram, and
Yeah.
we've done the
Yeah.
same thing. If you look at it now, it's all Sutton Capital. And I think the challenge with starting with a personal brand is the entire business. You are the bottleneck of the entire
Yeah,
business.
exactly.
Right?
And
So,
I'm an
like,
engineer. Like I'm
yeah,
like we gotta identify the bottlenecks and fix them. So
yeah, and
I
a
was
lot
like,
of times
okay,
with founders too, it's like founders don't realize it, but sometimes they're the biggest bottleneck because they can't find the right team to kind of take away some of those tactical things so they can focus on strategy. But I do see people after they kind of build a brand for a company,
mhm,
then they'll kind of focus on their personal brand later because that way they can use their personal brand as like another traffic
like
channel. I
jumping
mean,
off point.
everybody,
Yeah.
everybody, and I think Bethany Frankel has been getting a bit of fire recently on social media, but she's done a pretty good job. I mean, she's pretty late in her career, but she's built a crazy personal brand. She gets a lot of large high end brands work with her. I don't know if you've been following her, but like there's been some drama on TikTok because she wore somebody's shoes that was given to her as a gift, and she
Mhm.
didn't tag them and post the link. So there was a lot of apparently backlash from that. But again, I think when you've built the company first and the company's built its brand, I think on top along with that brand still growing, you could, I think later when you have more bandwidth, you could probably build your own brand down the line, right? And
Yeah.
and kind of
Well,
do that
it's
if
just
you
been
want
such
to.
a interesting journey because I feel so proud of the team that we built. So it's myself,
Hmm.
Andy, who is like just an amazing operator. And then Chumba, who has supported us on the What It Takes study, which is the study of the past $100 billion plus exits. So he's done that twice now. It's like an annual study that we do. And yeah, I just had this moment where I was like, well, I want this to live beyond me. And yeah, it was very interesting. But I was like, okay, now I have all the skill sets. And I think when you're building a personal brand, there's different questions that you evaluate when you're producing content. And I think at a certain point when your audience gets larger, it gets harder to like calibrate. But if you're building a business brand, there's like almost a clarity to the purpose, and the brand that you build is an expression of your values and what you do. And I'm a big proponent of like show not tell. Like our communication style should just be talking about the work that we do.
Sure. Is your What It Takes kind of, I mean, it reminds me of the Stephen Schwartzman book. Is a little bit of a nod to Schwartzman's book, which I think is a great book.
Honestly, it was an idea that Chumba spearheaded. He was really interested when he joined the firm. In studying like, okay, well, like what does it actually take to get to $1 billion exit? As a venture capitalist, you hear a lot of stories about outliers. And for us, it was like, okay, well, what is the game on the ground and what are the lessons we can take away from studying these exits? And I think a couple of the lessons that we took out of it were, one, orienting more towards very sticky, like almost hyper specialized companies that fly under the radar of other firms that represent just these like incredible, I'd call them like opportunity vehicles for founders. So we spend a lot more time building bottoms up models of the markets that founders are attacking to like more deeply understand, you know, how big is the field on which they can express that company's mission. And how does that translate into, you know, building great returns for our investors? And is it a journey we're really excited to go on with those founders?
So then you started kind of build. Well, I guess just going back to the Thomas, you started to build your brand, and then that kind of dovetailed into working as an operator. And then I think in tandem to that, I think you started to kind of build in public and kind of share your knowledge of what you were learning with syndicates. And then I think the syndicates, and we've seen a bunch of people do this. I mean, there was one of the graduates from our cohort, he worked at Google and Google Payments, and then built like a community for, you know, he built like a syndicate. And then that community turned into like, I'd imagine a lot of those LPs and those angel list syndicates probably turned into kind of LPs that just rolled into Fund One. It's like, you're doing all these deals, you're doing all these deals deal by deal, but you like the exact same theme. So you might as well just invest one time and get 1K1 into a fund structure, right?
Yeah, that was very much my journey. And it was great as I started leading syndicate deals. That's actually how I met my business partner in Fund One. And also like a lot of other people in the community who I've stayed close with, like David's out at, he was at On Deck Angels at the time, and I led a session on syndicates and was part of that first like On Deck Angels cohort, which was just a really great experience to get to meet other people who are going through the journey of learning what it was like to invest in startups. And now like I just saw him yesterday and we've remained friends like over all that time. So it's been cool to see some of those relationships come full circle and like grow and evolve.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest learnings that you learned when you were an operator and starting to kind of build community and also just kind of start posting content?
Oh, okay. The biggest lesson I learned when I was an operator was actually related to one of the WorkOS values. So it was basically like focusing on developer joy. And my role as a developer success engineer was focused around technical pre and post sales. So I was working with our customers, helping understand, you know, what challenges they were running into and how to communicate that to our product and engineering team. And at the core of it, like our key metric was developer joy. Like where can we find the wow moment in that company, and how can we continue to build off of our learnings to have developers experience more of that. And I think I learned so much about what it means to build an incredible brand as a business. Like I think WorkOS has done an incredible job of that. and have continued with like events. At the time it was COVID, so it was very virtual first, but we'd do like release days where every quarter we would release new features and it would be live. And so I think that element of building in public, and then also just working with like amazing talent. Like I worked with such talented engineers, designers, and yeah, it was just like such a joy.
Yeah. And kind of moving essentially back into investing, right? But now also building your own company. What was going on in your mind as you were thinking about Fund One, and obviously built a good relationship with Josh? And every time you build a partnership, you're thinking, it's the airport test, right? Can I be stuck at this airport can I be stuck in an airport with this person for 4 hours? I feel like that a lot of people talk about that these days. What do you think is important when looking into partnering up with a co-founder? And what were some of the things that was going on in your mind as you were building Fund One?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this. So Josh and I worked closely together for I would say like 2 years. So I was raising and investing our first fund, and then I've been a solo GP and built a team for the past additional like 3 years. So in terms of when I thought about a co-founder, I think when Josh and I met, we actually got introduced by someone who ended up becoming an LP in our first fund, Paul. And when he introduced us, he was like, you guys are exploring a lot of similar things, but come at it from a different angle. And I think a lot of it was like the complementary skill sets. I think Josh is an amazing recruiter and operator, and I brought a lot of the skill sets of like engineering and brand building. So I think that complementary skill set was really helpful because we had very clear delineations of what we were excellent at. And yeah, I mean, I like love building the first fund with him. So that was really great. And he decided to go on his journey to build a company. And we're still like great friends to this day. So I'm very grateful for that early chapter of my journey.
And I would say big edge that you have is your distribution. So, you've really built a distribution channel through content, community. Feel free to plug in some of your prompts. This is kind of the lead into that to pull up some of the prompts that you have. But look, I mean, you wrote a book on how to break into venture capital. And, your brother, I believe, is a, well-known, accomplished illustrator.
Yeah.
I'm a proud owner of the book. I bought it, because I have 2 little kids, so I figured be a good thing to review with them. But in terms of distribution, because for me, I also think that you got to stick to what medium you're comfortable with, and I haven't really spent
actually
as much.
I disagree with that, but okay. I'm excited to hear your question. But
that's good. I mean, so you disagree with sticking to the media channel that you feel comfortable with?
I think it's so important to push yourself, and as channels evolve, to understand what is the best fit for your business. So when I started, it was like building a personal brand on Twitter. And then in 2021, I saw a lot of movement towards audio first content. And I felt that was a very accessible medium. And I loved interviewing people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I was fundraising for Fund One, which is a 506B fund. Like, you can't actively talk about fundraising, but I was meeting all these amazing people. So I was like, well, why didn't I start a podcast to like share these stories more broadly?
Sure.
And then that became like a top 10% globally shared podcast. I wrote a book, and I think now I'm coming back to, as I mentioned before, like building the firm's brand, because ultimately, like, I don't want to be the bottleneck, and I think building our Behind Genius brand distribution engine is something I feel very confident in, and will have just incredible dividends. Like, if you think about a company's brand in consumer, like, it just adds an incredible amount of enterprise value. Or, for example, like if you look at some of the best firms in the venture space, like A16Z has done an incredible job building their brand across many different channels. And that is a big part of what has made them so successful today. And same thing with Thrive Capital. I feel like they've done an amazing job brand building, and those businesses like become some of the most valuable ones in the space. And so that's been like some of the inspiration that I've taken as I think about the future of Behind Genius. So I actually think it's like important to experiment with mediums and not be afraid to start over, because it's hard to feel like you're like, oh, I'm just starting over. I have like 100 subscribers or something.
Yeah.
But like we started a YouTube channel for Seed to Harvest, and I was like, oh, we like at the beginning you're starting from zero, and now it's like, okay, well now we have like, like an incredible amount of watch hours and timeless content. So I go back to like building timeless, valuable content and then experimenting with the medium.
One thing that you've also done is you've built all these templates and resources for people too. So it's valuable. People consume it, they use it now with Lovable and all these other tools. It's easy to build like a portfolio tracker or like an LP dashboard or something like that. Right. So I think, now I feel like we have the power to actually build like software widgets that actually do things that add value versus just like a blog post, which is like, hey, here's a step-by-step guide on how to launch a syndicate. Right now, here's like a syndicate portfolio model, or you type in a couple buttons and it models out the return. So I think that, I think to your point, that's a good point. I personally just have not been able to allocate my time to focus on just short form Twitter content. But you're right. I mean,
you're doing like the podcast, which is amazing. And
we
it's
have the
like the medium
podcast,
that
and then
you
we
feel.
chop up the podcast.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, once you have a team, you can have other people kind of help you, give you extra set of hands and do the
Exactly.
short form. We have a couple, we have a blog presence on our website, which I think helps. And a lot of it is just kind of like, hey, here's a financial modeling template, or here's
I have it
on
the blog. Like one of the things that I think about is writing pieces that inspire action. Like that's our North Star when we write a longer form piece. So for example, we wrote this piece on the technical storyteller during our Fund 2 deployment cycle. And that became like an incredible founder magnet. Like people would read it, they would remember the phrase, the technical storyteller. And whenever they would meet a founder who fit those characteristics, they would immediately send them to us. So I think that that's where long form can be really helpful in terms of creating these magnetic frameworks that help you, they're working when you're sleeping and people keep them very top of mind.
Yeah. And I'm biased too, because I think I'm just very video friendly. I think for me, I mean, as far as producing content, video is just easier. I'm lazy and I just don't want to wait like 2 days to kind of like, record it, edit it, push it out. So I just go live and hope for the best. There was one time where I did a live podcast with an institutional LP, and I had somebody that was fixing like the outlet in the other room, and the power went out.
No.
And I got back on, and it still worked out. But I think just kind of letting people embrace you as a human being and know that things could get messed up. But couple, like 2 short form pieces of content that I just shared in our Slack channel, which I thought was great, from Nicole Wishoff, was, one of the things she said was to increase your VC network, just generate a top 10 deal list monthly. So I think if you're an associate, or even if you're just looking to get into VC, right, you're a product manager at a software company, and maybe you do a small syndicate, a good way to kind of maybe build a relationship with with another associate to say, hey, here's my top 10 deal list. I know you're investing in gaming. Here's like 10 gaming deals that I source. And look, I go to a bunch of events during the week, and here's my top 10 deals, and here's my memo. Would you like access to it? Right. And, so that was one from Nicole Wishoff. And then I'll let you kind of add your reaction. Then the other one was really good. It was from Kate McAndrew. She said she led a $1 million pre-seed round into a pre-product company. What really got her was the founder slide. It was just a picture of the founder. There was no logos of her universities, no logos of all her. I mean, I think there are a few logos of where she worked, but there's really just 4 pillars. And the 4 taglines was, number 1, not my first 0 to 1. I have a commerce instincts, creator first insider perspective, and I move fast and I think big. And Kate was just saying that's what really, got her attention with that team slide.
Mm.
Pre-product, just kind of back the founder with a pretty high conviction pre-seed check
Yeah.
size. So
Yeah, I think that speaks to like a simple story is
Mhm.
oftentimes the hardest to tell. To just simplify
Yeah.
down a slide to 4 bullet points is really difficult. So
Mhm.
that's incredible.
Yeah. And then what are some of the biggest learnings that you learned as you were building community, and as you're building community and as some of those have flowed into LP relationships, what were some of the learnings there?
Oh, great
Or maybe
question.
from
So,
fund one, and then we'll talk about fund two.
um, hmm. I guess I think about it as a continuum of one of the big
Mhm.
learnings I've had is one of the reasons why LPs are so excited to work with Behind Genius is they actually get to spend time with the founders that we back. We do an annual
Mhm.
summit every year. When this year we had like 60 attendees, we had 4 portfolio founders present, and our LPs got to talk with them directly about their stories. So I think one of the biggest learnings is my role in building Behind Genius is almost like connecting our founders and sharing their stories to the right people. So, for
Mhm.
example, when we had the annual summit, we had a founder, Randall Hom of Hosty, speak. And I got a few emails from our LPs, and they're like, hey, I can connect him with, they are building voice AI for restaurants.
Mhm.
Randall's an amazing award-winning restaurant operator in San Francisco, and his co-founder Brendan is an early engineer from the voice AI space.
Yeah.
And I had like 3 or 4 emails of like, here's potential customers. And so I think one of the big things that I think about is building an active LP community. And a lot of our LPs are really excited to help our portfolio companies and get involved. And, they may be later on in their career have been managing large teams or have built their own really successful investment firms. And I think it's really fun to get in on the ground floor and help support these
Mhm.
founders at their earliest stages again, or leverage their networks that they built over their careers to support them. So I think that's been like a big learning is introducing opportunities for our LPs to support our portfolio founders, because
Mhm.
ultimately that feels great for the LPs. It helps our portfolio founders. And so it's a very like symbiotic relationship within our community.
Yeah, I mean, a common thing that I've been seeing with the fund managers that have done really well is just raise and deploy, raise and deploy. It's a lot of times at the same time,
I
and a
mean,
lot of times.
that's,
But I
yep.
mean, also it's kind of like you're raising, you're deploying, and then you're sharing. Maybe that's the third piece that I missed, but you're sharing an
Mhm.
update, saying, "Hey, look, I just want to, just want to give you an update." Obviously, when you're doing your email marketing, you're going to partition who's potentially a lead and who's maybe further down the pipeline if you do it right. But there's people that they've been thinking about it and they've wanted to be part of this journey, but they just can't get over the line, right? But a lot of
Mm.
times it might just be a couple more touch points to remind them the magical stuff that you're doing. So a lot of times, like, hey, by the way, like, I know we're still connecting, we're still co-investing together, but by the way, here's another one of our really hot deals. It's in the future of play AI, Gen AI space, and this is what they've been doing, and this is why we invested. And check it out. Let us know what you think, right? And I think that kind of it just keeps you in the conversations, and I feel like that's a lot of times that nurturing and that relationship building on different mediums kind of continues on to kind of evolve to maybe more of a more intimate LP relationship that actually
Yeah.
converts.
Here, wait, I'll show you a cool our investor update. So one of the
Mhm.
things that I felt very strongly about when I started Behind Genius, let me see if I can.
Mhm. Yeah, I think if you just hit the share button and then you do and then you share entire screen, that's kind of the easiest way that I've done it.
Whoa. Um, hmm. Was that going to share my whole screen or just one
I
tab?
always just share my entire screen because whenever I do one tab, it never shows up. Or you can send it to
Oh,
me,
okay.
whatever's easier.
Oh, okay.
I'm a
Wait,
pro.
maybe I can do an image file. Let's see. Today. Okay. Okay, so I need to
There we
update
go.
this, but this is a block I made of all of our investor updates that I've sent out. And I just wanted to put it into perspective on I think like communication and transparency is really important to me. So these are like the LP updates that we've sent across
Mm-hmm.
Fund 1 and Fund 2.
Yeah.
And I think that has been one of the best forcing functions in the business for me, is to have that level of consistency of updating our LPs every month when we're actively deploying, and then quarterly
Mm-hmm.
after the portfolio or after we're like done deploying.
Yeah.
And let's see. So I think that's been really helpful, because every month I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, what did we get done this month? What are we sharing? How can LPs be helpful? What are the asks our portfolio founders have? And that has helped build the relationship and build trust over time. And I love that. And now we have years of updates to look back on and see what our learnings have been. So that's been awesome.
One thing that we talked about in person is, like obviously there's the art of building a fund. So I want to talk
Mm-hmm.
about that. Like, what was going on in your mind as you were kind of prototyping this fund? There's a lot of great platforms and communities and support groups that have big brothers and big sisters that are already on Fund 3. So that definitely
Yeah.
helps. And I would say that hasn't been there probably
Like
7, 8
last
years
5 years
ago.
or something.
Last
Yeah.
5 years. Yeah. And we've been really excited to be part of that, as one of the communities, but
Yeah. Your
that
program
helped.
was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But like, I think, that helps a lot, because I mean, what that offers is time travel, right? You could figure it out, and that's what everybody else did, right? They figured it out. It might have taken a lot of time and a lot of mistakes, but if you have people that can mentor you, you actually get to zip through time by a couple of years, because you're learning off of their learning. So what were some of the things that your mentors were telling you that probably were also your LPs, when you were thinking about just the journey of launching a fund?
Mm.
And now, like, and then let's talk about like how that's evolved, or how you would advise to evolve that as people are thinking about their second fund.
Yeah, I would say there's two moments that really stick out in my head. So the first
Mm-hmm.
was in the process of raising our first fund. I was on a Zoom and I was talking to this operator. They were like a potential LP, and he was like, if you're ever in Palo Alto, like you should meet my mom. And I was like, that's an interesting comment. And then I learned that he and his mom do a lot of investing, and she is a pioneer in the space of computing, had built and sold like 8 technology companies. And I ended up booking a flight and flying to Palo Alto the next day. And we went on a walk around Palo Alto. And one of the things we talked about was my role in the ecosystem. So she had written this great book on the innovation economy by Judy Estrin. And in her view, like one of the most important elements of the innovation economy is these almost like greenhouses to nurture ideas that are just beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can easily get overshadowed by everything going bigger, 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 bigger. And I think that meeting really helped me clarify what our role in the ecosystem was, is like nurturing the next generation of investors and founders, and being very clear about that as like a key role in our stewardship of the firm. And then the second was when I moved to San Francisco, I was meeting, I made a list of some of the Midas list investors who I really looked up to. One of our values at Behind Genius is the disciplined pursuit of excellence. And I wanted to learn from more of those investors who had achieved investment excellence. And I remember I met with Samil Shah, who founded Haystack, who has like built just an incredible firm and backed like 8 decacorns in his $8 million fund. And so I came to our meeting with, I think, my book, and printed out pages of like the different investments we had made and why. And I remember he just looked at me and he was like, Paige, like all that matters is that like your next decision is like the best possible investment decision you can make. And that's what you should focus like all of your time on. And that will be the thing that pays off in the future. That's what your brand will be built on. Because ultimately it's about like the investments that continue to grow and then how you treat those entrepreneurs in the journey. And then I think that same week I had a meeting with Pejman from Pear, and he said a very similar thing. He's like, it becomes like you're searching for the one company that will make your career, and you want to set yourself up to like continue to make the best decision. So I think about that a lot, is like I always want to be an individual contributor as an investor in building this firm. That's very important to me because I love like the art and craft of the decision-making frameworks that go into building conviction. And we've focused heavily in Fund 2 around focusing on how do we improve our frameworks and then how do we back test them. So one of the things that we did was we started building more what we call like potential models to deeply understand like what is the potential of the business. And in one of those cases, like we had found this company we were really excited about, and that model showed us a path to $1 billion in ARR with capturing like 5% of the market in the manufacturing space. And so it allowed us to have the conviction to double our average check size. So that's like our largest investment in Fund 2, which is Maniva AI. And I think that has been really helpful, especially in a world where things are going, it's like very volatile. Like there's a lot changing right now. So I think spending the past 2 years deeply understanding how to build conviction and just focusing on that and blocking out all of the noise has been, just like an incredible learning period.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because I mean, one of the things we mentioned in person is really also evolving to just be a better investor. A lot of times people are looking to just learn how to build their first fund. Like, oh, what's my investment thesis? And how do I, what's my reserve that I should be thinking about? Or how many checks over how many years at what check size? It's really just kind of the construction. But once you've done that already, and it works, we talked about this too. Sometimes, if it's not broke, you don't need to fix it. If it works, and that's kind of a model and a fund size. They say your fund size is your strategy, right? So the size of your fund, if that is working and that's the strategy, and it's kind of a repeatable money-making machine, might as well just kind of keep doing that, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, as an engineer, I was trained to, you always want to define the problem and like understand the constraint. So in venture, it's like one of the core constraints is what is your fund size and strategy. And so for the future, I think about building right size funds and having a concentrated yet collaborative strategy. So 80% of our deals get sent to us by other VCs, and it's been like compounding over time in terms of the referral rates, and then also like the behind genius shaped referral rates, because we publish content on what kind of founders we would like to meet. And I think that in building a portfolio construction, one of the things that was really helpful that we got feedback on was early on, Eric, who was at Angelus and was their head of institutional capital, had a really great framework for kind of like a Goldilocks fund structure. As they looked across the data of funds that had performed incredibly well, a lot of them were in that 25 to 30 investments, and just like really made every investment count. And at that portfolio construction, you usually own a meaningful percentage of the company or in relationship to your fund. So when an outcome hits, like it really moves the needle from a returns perspective. Sure. So we've been pretty consistent about having like, similar portfolio construction so that all we are focused on is making the absolute best next investment decision.
Sure.
Yeah.
What have you learned in your evolution? I mean, because I'd say the evolution that I've also seen with you, Paige, is you've also not only evolved from the personal brand to a legacy brand that you're building as a corporation, as a company, but you've also evolved to being a leader, right? You're a people leader now. So yes, you do want to be an individual contributor. You probably lead the ICs and probably, the partners meetings. That's your contribution. But you're still going to be, I'm assuming, contributing at a different level, right? It's a level of leadership. So what have you learned in terms of attracting, retaining, and empowering talent?
Oh, what a great question.
Yeah, because you're a grown up now. You got people that report to you.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things has just been very clear on what our values are. So Andy and Chumba and I did an offsite in December of 2024 in Venice Beach. I rented this awesome house on the canals, and I remember one of the exercises that we did was we did a guided meditation, and then we were like, okay, we want to define our values as a firm. And we scribbled like a bunch of brainstorming on this Erewhon shopping bag from our lunch. And we came up with the disciplined pursuit of excellence, empathy, so understanding that everyone who we work with is human and they make mistakes, and really trying to step into another person's shoes as we're making decisions. And then the third is equanimity. And I think this one is incredibly important because as a founder, as an investor, you will go through happy times and you will go through very challenging times in running a business. And equanimity is the practice of maintaining a calm mind in challenging times. And I think as I've been a leader of this firm through, 2021 and like an incredible bull run, and then a pretty severe crash adventure in 22, 23, and working through that, I think that's been a really important value. So when I think about building a team, I think it's about like aligning around values. And then from an empowering perspective, I really want, again, as I said, like Behind Genius as the brand to grow and be an expression of our entire community, like not just our team, but like our founders and our LPs, and empowering our team members to shine. Like Andy is like an incredible operator. And he's written some of our amazing guides on like a guide to VC secondaries. He's like very talented analytically. And then Chumba is just so spiky on like, he just wants to be the best investor possible and like learn about what the best founders do. And from my perspective, like I want to build an incredible firm and have a diversity of opinions around the table that makes the shape of that firm unique. And I think that's like what really stands out in a world of very sameness. So I think about cultivating the ability to have like differences in opinion is really important to me.
Yeah. If you were, and you went through this process already, but if you're looking to hire another associate, what are some of the skills that you think you'd be looking for?
What a great question. When I think about it, like both Andy and Chumba are founders in their own right and have gone through the process of like building businesses, and Chumba also sold his. And then like I think that to me is really important, that they've done something entrepreneurial in their career and have that ability to have like deep founder empathy from that perspective. And then I also think like very talented written communication skills and the ability to be inquisitive, and that passion, that like curiosity and passion comes from somewhere like deep within them and is innate to them. And I think a great sense of humor is also important. I would say we like to have fun as a team. And as I said before, like you go through challenging situations. I think it's important to be able to like have a sense of humor. And yeah, that they're like spiky in a dimension that we don't have on our team yet. So I would, I've been thinking a lot about like a story engineer position that would be kind of like a hybrid of like a tactical operator on the media side and then potentially spending time on the investing side as well. So yeah, thinking about that.
That's interesting. So taking some of your, investments and strategies and kind of really storytelling the way that you guys always have been, but taking maybe some of that off,
like
right?
I think as I said before, as an engineer, you identify the bottlenecks, and like I am the bottleneck in terms of like switching personal distribution to brand distribution from
Yeah.
a company perspective for Behind Genius. And then also I would say I'm very talented at building like brand systems. So understanding like how to make it obvious, like what to share from our story of Behind Genius, and having like a really talented operator who could execute on that appreciates having a bit more structure. I would say like I'm able to build the structure and execute on it. And I'm getting to this point where now I'm like, okay, I want to build the structure and have folks that are helping execute that element.
I feel like that could be a great lecture, like at some point, like when you share your content. I feel like just sharing like a diagram in terms of how the brand could be distributed. We've been just trying to like repurpose as much as we can, right? We go live, that goes out on long form, and it goes on short form. So that's, I just been trying to think of like the low hanging fruit, but you could take some of that content and then obviously create like LinkedIn slides, right? And then do a lot of stuff on Twitter too. But like,
I call this
trying
like,
to do.
I call this the accordion model. So I
Mm-hmm.
wrote a blog post about it on my personal blog on paigefindoherty.com called the accordion method. And it's like the idea of taking one idea or concept and like expanding or contracting it. So a lot of things start as medium format written pieces. And then it's like, okay, well, how can we extend that and make it, to your point, like interactive with AI? Or how can we shorten it to make like a really engaging short form video? And then taking bits and pieces from, you know, what I've learned, like I've studied YouTube videos for a decade plus, and like have a really deep understanding of how to construct a story that grabs and retains attention and tells a meaningful story. So like, how do we apply those learnings, or like the learnings I've had reading books like The Conversation, which is an amazing book about, oh my gosh, what is his name? I'm blanking on it. Walter Murch, I think. He's like this incredible film editor, and his focus was like on, he would always edit films standing up and with the sound off. So like the story had to make sense without sound, which was something I took into perspective. So like a lot of people on their phones like watch videos with the sound off. So I was thinking about that. Yeah. So I think about the accordion method is like how can we expand pieces of content, and how can we also bring the principles of creation from other mediums into what we're building, and like what makes something compelling and unique.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we got about 3 minutes left. Maybe a book recommendation. I mean, I think you shared one, but any other great books for people looking to kind of build their career as an investor?
Oh, I mean, I feel like I'm a pretty extensive reader. I think one of the ones that I've been reading that's been interesting recently is it's more woo-woo, but is like this book called Conscious Dreaming. And it's on how to remember your dreams better and like ask for guidance in your dreams.
Oh,
and I think
interesting.
for me, like so much of my career has come out of dreams. Like the idea for Seed to Harvest was like a full dream I had, where I was a gardener and I was like nurturing plants. And I had a dream about this in July of 2020. And I was like, that's the book. And like I had a dream that I was meant to move to San Francisco, and I did. And so I think that listening to your dreams and almost your like subconscious can illuminate paths that may have evaded you if you're just like listening to your more rational side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like I think I struggle sometimes with trying to prioritize books. I'm like, man, I should like focus on just focus on the books that are going to help me better as a business person, or help me be more professional, versus reading books that could just kind of be like, hey, and how do I just be a better human being, or what's the history
like that comes
of
out as
humanity?
like an expression. Like I think if you're working to become a better human, like in that, like you will become stronger from a business sense as well. But I think like business wise, I love Yvon Chouinard's Let My People Go Surfing. I'm like a huge fan of that book on the story of Patagonia. And then
that's the biography of Patagonia?
Yeah, it's really good.
Cool. I'm gonna add that to my list. What was the name of the book?
Let my people go surfing.
Let my people go surfing. Cool. I'm posting all of this
Yeah.
stuff within the comments too, so that way
Oh, cool.
everybody has it, and I have it too as an archive. And then look, we got 1 minute left. One piece of advice you want to leave us. It could be from a family member, it could be from a past manager, it could be from an LP, it could be from anybody. But what's the one thing that you want us to take away from this?
I think why not is a valid reason for doing something.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. There's always a risk of not doing, right? So
yeah.
yeah.
Or I mean, I guess to phrase it a different way is like practice the leap. Like you'll always be making decisions with incomplete information, and you just have to practice that leap of making a decision when you don't have all the information that you think you need, and seeing where it takes you, not being afraid to fail, and occasionally it works out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what investing is called, right? You're investing in, you don't know what's going to happen, but you're using your instincts, the qualitative data that you have, the information that you have, and if you take too long, you know, it may not be there, right? So I think that's like the whole ethos of just investing as well. So I totally agree with that. So
awesome. Well, Joel, thank you so much for having me on. This was so fun, and I really enjoyed it. I hope the people listening did as well.
I really enjoy this page, and it's always great to catch up and learn so much from you. So I'm very confident. This is probably one of our top episodes, and all of our audience, I'm very confident, has learned a lot. So thanks for your time. I know you're busy. So thanks for making time for me and the community.
Yeah, of course. This is awesome. Thanks so much.
Have a good one. Take care.
All right. Take care.